Here's the story everyone was told. Nolan Wells stayed behind on Horn Island because of a girl he'd just met. His friends said it. Investigators repeated it. For weeks, that became the accepted explanation for why an 18-year-old ended up alone on a remote barrier island in the final hours before he died. But the person who knew Nolan best says that story doesn't hold up.
Jayvon, I want to come to you because, you're his friend. You were on the island on the 4th. You were on a different boat. Do you recall seeing him at all that day?
Yes, ma'am. I did see him when I was out there on the island.
Can you tell me what you saw? Does anything seem strange to you about the difference that people are saying of how he was separated from the group?
No, ma'am. I don't think that Nolan would say, hey, bro, I'm staying with this girl on the island. Y'all go ahead and go back without even bringing it, not even asking to get his phone back. You know what I mean? I don't think that any of that.
Jayvon Williams, Nolan's best friend, who was also on the island that day, heard how the account was being told, and his response was direct. That's not who Nolan was.
I don't think that Nolan would say, hey, bro, I'm staying with this girl on the island. Y'all go ahead and go back without even bringing it, not even asking to get his phone back. You know what I mean? I don't think that any of that.
What makes you so sure about that? Because, obviously you've been with him, you've spent a lot of time with him. Did you know him to be someone to leave his phone or even say, you guys go without me?
Never. I've never known Nolan to stay back while his friends leave. He's always been a guy where if he rode with you, he's going to come back with you. That's always how he's been every single time.
You know, this friend of his, Trayston, also told ABC that video people have been talking about that was said to show some sort of altercation, it did not involve Nolan. He says it was actually him yelling in the video and that you and a family member were holding him back because he'd been in a fight. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am. We were calming Trayston down. In that video where he said, give me my effing phone back, it sounds like him. So I'm pretty sure that he was right on that, but...
Subscribe now, because Jayvon isn't the only one who says the official story doesn't add up. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this one account has kept the Nolan Wells case from being closed. To understand why Jayvon's objection matters, you have to understand the story that came before it. On July 4th, Nolan Wells traveled to Horn Island with a large group of friends, a holiday tradition for a lot of Mississippi Gulf Coast teenagers. Sometime in the late afternoon, one of the boats in the group developed an electrical problem and had to head back to the mainland early. Trayston Shepard was on that boat. According to Shepard, Nolan wasn't with them when they left because he didn't want to be. Shepard says Nolan had met a girl earlier that day. The two hit it off, and Nolan told his friends he'd catch a ride back later with someone else. It's a version of events Shepard has repeated across multiple interviews, including with ABC News. That account lines up with what deputies were told in the days after Nolan went missing. A Mississippi Department of Marine Resources report on the search noted that friends who'd been on the trip said Nolan chose to stay on the island, in the company of a woman the report didn't name. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter later confirmed that was the department's understanding too. From what they understood, he chose to stay there. Shepard has pushed back hard against any suggestion he or the other friends did something wrong. He and the others cared about Nolan and never wanted to see him hurt, he said, while also revealing that he and others connected to the trip have received threats online since Nolan's body was found, serious enough that he declined to appear on camera for at least one interview. For weeks, this was simply the story. Nolan stayed, his friends left. Nobody suspected foul play. Then Jayvon Williams spoke up. Jayvon Williams wasn't a distant acquaintance offering an opinion from afar. He was there. He and Nolan had planned to ride out to Horn Island together that day, but when their original boat filled up, Jayvon caught a different one. He still found Nolan on the island that afternoon, and by his account, when the two reunited, Nolan told him he loved him. It would be the last time they saw each other. So when the story started circulating that Nolan had met a girl, liked her, and chose to stay behind with her instead of leaving with his friends, Jayvon didn't dispute that a girl existed. He disputed what came next. Speaking to CNN, he laid out his reasoning plainly. Whatever Nolan felt about her, that wasn't how his best friend operated. If you rode somewhere with Nolan, he came back with you. That was the pattern, every single time. Splitting off from the group to stay behind on a remote island with someone he'd just met wasn't, in Jayvon's telling, something Nolan would actually do, whatever he might have said in the moment. It's a distinction worth sitting with. Jayvon isn't necessarily calling Shepard or the other friends liars. He's saying the ending they described, Nolan staying, by choice, alone, doesn't match the person he knew. He's repeated some version of that same argument in nearly every interview he's given since, saying simply that he misses his friend every day. It's an argument built on character, not physical evidence. On its own, it might not be enough to outweigh an official account backed by multiple witnesses and a sheriff's public confirmation. But Jayvon Williams turned out not to be the only person close to this story who thought something didn't add up. To understand why Jayvon's word carries weight, it helps to understand what he and Nolan actually were to each other. Because this wasn't a friendship built over a few months, or even a few years of high school.
Nolan was just a guy that, if you were feeling down, he's going to put a smile on your face. He always found a way to make me laugh, even though he was getting on my last nerve. But I always love him, man. Like, that guy was, like, he was a blessing. Like, I mean, like, Nolan literally did everything with me. Like, if he wasn't going somewhere, I wasn't going somewhere. If I was going, he was going. Like, we were just, like, we were literally like brothers. Like, honestly, like, we did everything. We talked every day. We could be, like, he'll be at college. Obviously, I was still in high school. We'd come back down, still have the same bond. Like, always, we will always have that brotherhood relationship.
What has it been like now in this last week alone?
It's been hard, honestly. Like, it's really stressful. Like, with everything that's been going on, it's just, it doesn't feel real. Like, it just hurts really bad. And I just wish things were differently. Like, it's hard because things don't add up. And I wish I could just, you know, talk to my best friend every day again. And I can't do that anymore. And it just hurts so bad. And I feel like people will just, on the internet, just running with narratives that they don't know, saying I was the last to leave him. If I was last to leave Nolan, Nolan would still be with us today. And I think that's something that's been on my mind so much lately, because with everything I've been going through, it's just like, how can y'all blame me for this? Like, that was my brother. Like, y'all don't know me. Like, that was literally my best friend. And it's just so hard, honestly. And I just miss him every day. But I'm also so grateful to have him even as a friend, honestly. He was such a blessing.
By multiple accounts, the two grew up together, part of the same close-knit circle of kids in and around Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Nolan graduated from Ocean Springs High School and went on to play wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College. His high school coach later said publicly that what stood out about Nolan wasn't just his talent on the field. It was the humility and respect he carried everywhere he went. People who'd known him since childhood say that reputation held. Friends remembered him as the kind of person who could change the energy of a room just by walking into it. Within that same circle, a woman the group of kids had grown up calling a grandmother figure remembered Nolan simply as kind-hearted, someone who loved sports and loved the people around him just as much. Jayvon wasn't on the edge of that circle. He was in the middle of it, close enough that the two of them had planned to ride out to Horn Island together that morning, before Jayvon's boat filled up and he had to catch a different one. It's a small detail, but it says something about the shape of their friendship. This wasn't two people who happened to cross paths at the same party. It was a friendship built on showing up together, over and over, for years. That history is what was sitting behind the two of them when they found each other on the island that afternoon. And it's part of why what Nolan said to him in that moment has stayed with Jayvon the way it has. Days later, when search crews recovered Nolan's body and brought it back to shore at Lake Mars boat launch, Jayvon was there. So was the rest of that same childhood circle, people who'd known Nolan since before any of this started, standing at a boat launch instead of a birthday party or a Friday night football game. That's the relationship underneath the objection Jayvon has repeated in nearly every interview since Nolan died. When he says an island, alone, wasn't something Nolan would choose, he's not speaking as someone who read about a stranger online. He's speaking as someone who'd known Nolan long enough to know exactly what didn't sound like him. Jayvon wasn't the only person poking holes in the stayed behind for a girl story. The girl herself, or at least her family, was too. Weeks after Nolan's disappearance, the young woman he was said to have stayed behind for was reportedly identified. 19-year-old Katie McCormick, a student from a nearby town. She's never spoken publicly about that day, but her sister has, and what she says complicates the story further. According to her sister, Katie didn't think Nolan was staying behind for her at all. The two had only spoken briefly. As far as Katie understood it, Nolan was getting back on the boat with his friends, just like everyone else. That's not a small detail. It means two separate people, Nolan's best friend and the young woman he was allegedly staying behind for, are both, in their own ways, contradicting the account that's been repeated by investigators and friends alike. Family attorney Ben Crump put the contradiction bluntly. You have McCormick saying Nolan was getting back on the boat, and you have the friends saying Nolan told them he was staying with her. Somebody, Crump said, must not be telling the truth. McCormick's family has said they've cooperated fully with investigators and have nothing further to add. But the discrepancy itself, friends and the mystery girl telling two different versions of the same afternoon, is part of why this case still doesn't have a clean, agreed-upon ending. And the questions don't stop with who said what. There's also the matter of Nolan's phone, and what happened to it after he was gone.
What's happened to Nolan? I mean, you mentioned a phone. Tashima, a huge question so many people have is why he would have left his cell phone behind. And you say you were the person who actually went and retrieved that phone for the family. How did you get your hands on the phone? Where was it?
That is correct. Christine called me and told me, hey, where are the boys? Nolan hasn't been heard from since such and such time. Where are your boys? I said, well, Jayvon is with his girlfriend, and I just spoke with Jalen, and they are headed to downtown, which I was literally getting ready to get in the shower to go downtown as well. Mm-hmm. She said, well, Nolan hasn't been. So I instantly called with Christine on the phone, Jayvon. Jayvon said no, he hadn't seen Nolan since early on the island. And he was like, what? Are y'all serious? We was like, yes. And so Christine intervened in the conversation, said, Nolan has not been heard from since he left the island. So Jayvon was like, well, that's when I seen it. I haven't seen it since then. Again, everybody goes their separate ways. So I then hang up from Jayvon because obviously there's nothing he can say to tell me anything. So then Jalen, I call him. Mm-hmm. Jalen did not answer the phone. Christine again is on the phone. Jalen did not answer the phone. LeBaron, I called, after he didn't answer the phone, I called LeBaron, which is their other friend, LeBaron Broomfield. He answered. He said, Jalen is in the gas station. Hold on. So he said, hey, Jalen, Mom on the phone. So he was like, Jalen, like, what's up, Mom? What's going on? I was like, hey, have y'all heard from Nolan? They said, no, we have not heard from Nolan.
But where was the phone?
So I was like, well, okay. So that's when we started tracking the phone. Well, for Christine, it said one place, but for them on Snapchat, it showed another place. So that's the place we went to. And it showed that everybody that was in the house, it was like a lot of people there. Like it was, I'm not familiar with all the kids. Mm-hmm. I only know like one or two people there. But it showed that the phone was at what a lot of people were at. So that's how we knew where to go to. We went there. They were all there. They were sitting there, lights off, watching TV.
Did they immediately give you the phone? Because knowing that phone was there.
It took about 15. They did. They gave me the phone, but it took about 15 minutes to get the phone. Because I even asked, I'm like, did y'all have to walk back to Horn Island to get the phone? Or like, where's the phone? Because it took so long when they said it was in, when Wyatt told me it was in his truck, it took him so long to get the phone back to me.
Christine,
so when they brought the phone back.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tashima. I want to hear that.
When they brought the phone, after I said something about it, he was like, well, she's going to get it. I was like, who's going to get it? He's like, the girl's going to get the phone.
When Nolan's friends left Horn Island without him, his phone didn't leave with him. It left with them. That detail alone might not mean much, except for what happened next. Nolan's mother started searching for answers when he stopped responding, and a close family friend began tracking the phone's location. It pinged to a house where a group of people appeared to be hanging out, When she arrived, the lights inside were off, and it reportedly took about 15 minutes before anyone came out with the phone. The story of where exactly it had been shifted in that window. First, it was in a friend's truck. Then someone said a girl would bring it out instead. 15 minutes isn't long, but for a family already searching for their son, it was long enough to raise questions. Those questions didn't end once the phone was back in the family's hands. According to Ben Crump, the attorney representing the Wells family, messages had been deleted from Nolan's phone by the time they got it back, though who deleted them and why has never been established. To be clear, no one has publicly proven those deletions were deliberate or tied to anything more than routine phone use. But it was enough that Nolan's family and the district attorney's office agreed to a joint forensic review of the device, their experts and the states examining it together. It's one more thread in a growing pattern, an official story that keeps needing footnotes. And the phone isn't the only piece of digital evidence at the center of this case's confusion. There's also a video, one that, for a while, had people convinced they were hearing something they weren't. Not long after Nolan went missing, a piece of cell phone footage started spreading online, apparently filmed around 2:30 that afternoon, showing someone who appeared to be Nolan in a tense exchange with a group of people. On the audio, a voice can be heard shouting for someone to give him back his phone. For a family already desperate for answers, that clip looked like evidence of a struggle. Nolan's family said it appeared to show their son in a confrontation. The sheriff's department took it seriously enough to publicly ask anyone who'd witnessed or heard an argument on the island that day to come forward. For a while, that video was one of the most alarming pieces of the entire case. Then, Trayston Shepard spoke up. Reached by phone for an interview, he declined to appear on camera, citing threats he says he and others have received. Shepard said the voice on that video wasn't Nolan's at all. It was his own, he said, explaining he'd been pulled into an altercation of his own and had to be restrained. Here's what makes that claim harder to just wave away. Jayvon Williams, the same friend disputing the stayed behind story, said independently that he believed it too, that the voice was Shepard's, not Nolan's. It's a rare point of agreement in a case built almost entirely on conflicting accounts. And it matters, because it means one of the most frightening pieces of evidence in this case wasn't evidence of anything happening to Nolan at all. But resolving who was yelling on a video doesn't resolve the bigger question. It just narrows it. Because even with that piece explained away, the sheriff's office and Nolan's own family are still nowhere close to agreeing on what actually happened to him that day. Despite the video controversy, despite Jayvon's objections, despite the discrepancy over Katie McCormick's own account, Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter has remained consistent. His department's understanding hasn't changed. Nolan chose to stay on the island. His friends left. There's no public evidence, as investigators have described it, of foul play. The working theory has been an accidental drowning, and Ledbetter has maintained his investigators are still actively pursuing answers, standing by the process, even as public pressure mounted online. Nolan's family isn't convinced. Through Ben Crump, the Wansleys have pushed back on the drowning theory itself, pointing out that Nolan was an accomplished swimmer with an athletic background, not the profile investigators would expect for someone who simply drowned by accident. It's part of why the family sent Nolan's body out of state, to Washington, D.C., for an independent autopsy, a second opinion from a doctor with no ties to Mississippi law enforcement. That independent autopsy came back inconclusive. It didn't support the family's suspicions, but it didn't rule them out either. Cause and manner of death were listed as undetermined, pending further investigation. The family hasn't been alone in pushing for more scrutiny. Days after Nolan's death, the Congressional Black Caucus issued its own statement, arguing too many questions remained unanswered and calling for a full, transparent investigation. So here's where that leaves things. One sheriff's department confident in an account several people close to Nolan say doesn't add up. One independent autopsy that raised more questions than it answered. And a family that says they're not backing down until they have real answers. Which brings the case to where it stands today. No longer just a dispute over one afternoon on an island, but a case now headed somewhere much more consequential. So where does that leave things? As of the past few days, Mississippi's state medical examiner has completed its autopsy. Prosecutors are now preparing to bring their findings to a grand jury, and per the district attorney's office, the results won't be made public before that happens. They're sealed, at least for now. That's the next real turning point in this case. Not another interview, not another dueling account of who said what on Horn Island. A formal legal process where a jury reviews the evidence investigators have gathered and decides whether it supports criminal charges. It's worth being precise here. As of today, no one has been charged in connection with Nolan Wells' death. Not Shepard, not any of the other friends who were on that boat, not anyone else. The sheriff's office has said publicly it hasn't found evidence of foul play. What's headed to the grand jury is the full case file, which almost certainly includes every contradiction this video has walked through. Shepard's account, Jayvon's objection, the discrepancy in Katie McCormick's version, the unanswered questions about the phone. In other words, the dispute over what really happened to Nolan Wells on July 4th isn't just playing out in interviews and comment sections anymore. It's now a question a grand jury will have to weigh directly. There's no public timeline yet for when that grand jury will convene, or when, if ever, the sealed autopsy results become public. What we do know is this: the story that was supposed to explain everything, a boy who simply chose to stay behind, still hasn't held up to the people who knew him best. Take away every side detail, the video, the phone, the timeline, and this case still comes down to one unresolved question. Did Nolan Wells choose to stay behind that day, or didn't he? Jayvon Williams says no. He's said it in nearly every interview he's given since Nolan died. That's not who his best friend was. He's not alone in that anymore. Not with McCormick's own sister disputing the story. Not with a family that sent their son's body across the country for a second opinion. Not with the district attorney's office now preparing to lay this entire timeline in front of a grand jury. Investigators have said, publicly and repeatedly, that they don't see evidence of foul play. That may turn out to be exactly right. But for the people who knew Nolan best, he chose to stay was never a full explanation. It was just the last thing anyone heard before he was gone. Whatever the grand jury eventually decides, the story Jayvon Williams told the world hasn't been resolved. It's only gotten harder to ignore. We'll be following this case as it moves forward. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you catch it when it does.